Good evening, everyone. Here's an update for Ukraine on this August 16th. Apologies for the tank top, but it is hot as balls here, and I was just outside. So, anyways, the biggest news recently is obviously the series of brazen attacks that the Ukrainians have conducted against the Russians in Crimea. It's being reported that most of these attacks are being conducted by an elite special operations force from Ukraine in Crimea, blowing up various weapons depots, being spotters for targeting for missiles potentially, also conducting these operations internally themselves with their own explosives. Senior Russian officials vowed last month that if Ukraine attacked Crimea, it would face Judgment Day immediately. Now, this place doesn't necessarily only hold military significance because although it is a military staging area and a logistics hub for Russia's invasion into the southern portions of Ukraine, Vladimir Putin himself has said that Crimea is a sacred place and a Russian holy land. And by Ukraine repeatedly striking territory, Ukraine has started a fight that has escalated the attitude of what Russia will respond with, although Russia has largely not responded yet in any kind of significant way. Now, Crimea is significant also because there was really no single action in Putin's 22-year rule that has generated him as much pro-Russian euphoria amongst the Russian people of what the Kremlin is doing than when Russia annexed Crimea. And they saw Putin as resurrecting the great Russian power, and he is their leader to do so. So when Ukraine is now striking Crimea, it is kind of striking at the heart of that image of Putin, that they're chipping away at his image as being this infallible military leader. And there's been warnings now coming out of the Kremlin, and Putin said that Crimea poses this existential security threat that Ukraine is attacking it. Now, we've heard this terminology before, existential threats, when in their nuclear doctrine. So I'm not entirely sure what that means. Again, they like to saber rattle their nuclear weapons consistently in an effort to try and stop people from doing things such as supplying weapons, interfering, etc. And they haven't yet to do anything with regard to nuclear weapons other than elevate their nuclear stance, I don't know, something like 7 times. So Putin has said that Ukraine's actions on the peninsula could force a direct war between Russia and NATO. Yeah, sure, okay. Now, what's interesting is Ukraine is conducting this systematic campaign to degrade Russian military capability in Crimea. They've disrupted ground lines of communication. They've disrupted logistics lines, and they've cut off something like 20,000 troops in the region because bridges have been destroyed. Now, there's been a record number of vehicles leaving Crimea, and they're crossing the Kerch Bridge, or the Crimean Bridge, into Russia. Well, Russia now is concerned that that bridge will be the next target. And they have closed that bridge until 6 a.m. tomorrow as they fear possible strikes from Ukraine. Now, Russia is also fearing a counterattack in the coming days. And when I just talked about those 20,000 troops that are cut off from their supply lines, they're in the crosshairs because they had to continue their fire missions. They've had to continue their probing attacks. They're running out of equipment. They're running out of food, and they're having to live off the local economy. The Ukrainians know this. This is why the Ukrainians have not conducted a massive counterattack. They're bleeding the Russians in the area, knowing full well that they cannot sustain themselves for very long. And then when they are at a sufficiently weakened state, that is when Ukraine potentially could strike. I'm not sure when that would be. I would hope that I wouldn't be able to find that out. That would mean that likely Russia had found it out as well. But that is likely the plan of what's going on as Ukraine continues to just destroy depots and logistics lines and just degrade Russian capability severely, putting enough fear in the Russians in Crimea that they are leaving in record numbers. So very significant what is going on with regard to Crimea and around Kherson. So keep an eye on that. That is probably some of the bigger news for what's going on in Ukraine. Now, moving on to other parts of the geopolitical situation surrounding Ukraine, Germany has actually planned to postpone the closure of its last 3 nuclear power plants. And all I have to say is thank God. I mean, I've just been harping on this for the past, I don't know, 4 months. And I mean, I get it. I'm a fucking nobody TikToker, but I'm not the only one that's been saying, why are you shutting down your nuclear power plants just to turn on coal power? Well, facing this possible shortage of energy this winter after Russia has throttled gas supplies to the country, the German government said that it will delay, at least temporarily, the closure of the last 3 nuclear power plants that were in operation in that country. So this is actually a pretty strong departure from a policy that's lasted about 22 years, where the Green Party within Germany has fought very hard to eliminate nuclear power in favor of more renewable energy. So to have them turn on this is significant, at least even in a temporary manner. Now, the U.S. is actually supplying more gas to Europe than Russia, but interestingly, Norway is now supplying more natural gas to Germany than Russia, and this is the first time ever. So Russia is being slowly replaced, and that's why I say these nuclear power shutoffs will probably be temporary, as eventually Germany will be self-sustaining, or at least sufficiently sustained from entities outside of Russia in the near future. Now, in a recent interview with Russian state media, TASS, the Russian head of the foreign ministry, Alexander Darachev, or not his head, but the North American department head, said that if the U.S. designates Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, it would represent a point of no return. I feel like Russia says that they've hit a point of no return every other week, but this would be the next one. Speaking on behalf of the country, which ironically has ruthlessly, that's a tough word to say this evening, has ruthlessly invaded Ukraine in a terroristic fashion, is now complaining about human rights violations of Ukraine and the escalations of the United States, and that the United States has trampled upon international law and the absolute taboos of diplomatic practice. Just fuck you, Russia, you fucking idiots. This resolution that the United States is pushing forward through Congress is a bipartisan resolution. It was sponsored by Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, a Republican and a Democrat, and it passed the Senate. It's headed to the House of Representatives, where Speaker Pelosi has warned that if Secretary of State Blinken does not move ahead with designating Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, Congress will. And so such a move is likely going to happen, and the measure would add Russia to the list of pariah states. That includes North Korea, Iran, and Syria, allowing global governments to expand their measures, list of sanctions, and exert further pressure, etc., etc. So this is a significant move. Now, moving on, along those lines, this also would limit Russian visas in their movements. Now, this policy has been moving forward already throughout the European Union in limiting the ability of Russians to move from Russia into European countries for vacation, saying it's not fair that the Russian government is conducting this war in Ukraine while the Russian people vacation throughout Europe. And this has actually caused a surprising uproar within Russia, as many of the population have been quite pissy about the fact that they can't go to Paris or London or other places that they traditionally would go vacation to. Now, obviously, it would be the wealthy elites out of Russia because, let's be honest, the average lower class Russian can't just fly somewhere and vacation. So they're becoming very upset about this. And it proves my point that Russian people are no different than their government. The Russians support the war, but get pissed when they get their pee-pees slapped over it. And that's the problem. This isn't just the Kremlin and Putin's war. This is Russia's war. The Russian people support Putin in a significant manner. So this is just proving it. And the true colors of the Russian people are now showing. They don't care about Ukraine's plight. They don't care about Ukraine. They just care about if they can go vacation in Prague. And I say, fuck you, Russia, and your people. That's it.